Welcome to the Run Yogi Diaries podcast. Thanks for stopping by. My name is Santosh Shiva. I'm the podcast host and the creator. This podcast is about stories. Through conversations with ordinary people on extraordinary journeys, through their endurance sports achievements, we explore their motivations, strategies, and what keeps them going. Each of us have the possibility to be athletic. And being athletic is not just physical. It is also a victory of our will over the ordinary circumstances that we live in. I hope you take back some inspiration, some motivation, and hopefully go back and perspire. Stay inspired. If you're new to the channel, please do remember to subscribe, hit like if you like this video, and leave your comments if you took something away. Excited to be in conversation with Sundar Kumbakonam, one of the co-founders of the online spiritual community called The Journey Within, as well as a leading yoga studio that he founded in Bangalore called the Tapasya Yogashala. Sundar's quest for more led him to exciting teachers and influences. One amongst them, the work of Gurdjieff. He's an active member of Gurdjieff Foundation of India. I believe that the pursuit of well-being is closely intertwined with the metaphysical. Hope you enjoy this conversation. Let's dig in. Hey Boju, welcome to Run Yogi Diaries, aka Sundaresh Kumbakonam.
Hey Santosh, how are you?
I'm
Very
good.
nice to see you again.
Second take. Well, I'm going to call you Boju, or should I call you Sundareshan? Which is
Sundar is more
Sundar.
what people are going by. Sundar, yeah.
Sundar. Okay, so I'm going to call you Sundar in the podcast. So Sundar, welcome again to Run Yogi Diaries. Usually have in the podcast endurance athletes and runners and triathletes and mountaineers, and I've had occasional people who talk about transformation. But I wanted to have you in the conversation because you have a very fascinating background, and especially your journey in the space of spirituality is fascinating, which is a form of endurance by itself. So we want to dig into all of that.
Endurance over several births, as they say it.
Yeah, we're going to get into all of that. I think there's a lot out there. So before that, let me take a stab at introducing you, and then we'll go from there.
Sure.
So, right, Sundar Kumbakonam, I know you because you're my brother-in-law's brother, and we know each other for a while. But what I know of you is definitely that you're someone who's really dwelt a lot in the area of spiritual knowledge and also a practitioner of spirituality. But professionally, you're a engineer, being a technologist, being in California, Bay Area, now back in Bangalore, India, doing some interesting stuff in the area of well-being and spirituality, and we'll get into all of that. Married, two lovely kids. Did I miss anything? Did I get everything right about you?
One thing you missed is my passion, which is cooking, and I'm also working on an app for cooking.
Yeah, thank you. Yes. I've been a consumer of some of your cooking, and I can testament of amazing work you do in the kitchen as well. So great. So hey, we're here to kind of get a sense of your own personal journey, and then we'll jump into a few other things in terms of some of the concepts and principles that you're familiar with. But let's do a bit of a flashback here, right? And get a sense of when did you start this quest, this spiritual quest, and why? Like, what got you into it?
It's very interesting that very early on, when I was around 9, my grandfather, who also goes by the same name, Sundareshan, I think he was at that time much younger. He lived 99 years. So
Wow.
maybe he would have been around his 60s or 70s, when he was very sick, and I kind of felt that I should ask for help. And there was a wall and there was a beam of light that was on the wall. And I think that was the first ever time I kind of surrendered or prayed to something above me without having a rational reason why. But I would have been a kid, very young kid at that time. Something I wanted, something I was worried, and I let go. And I made this thing now can look very stupid because it was just a light and I was looking at it. And then I would say that was one trigger which I remember. Frankly, I don't remember it all the time, but since you asked, it came to me that that would be one of the earliest. Later on, pretty much started to listen to Osho, especially thanks to my brother. At that time, I was in college, and he would send me these tapes of 45 minutes, 50 minutes, and found whatever was going on extremely fascinating. And that's how it started, and it has just started to continue to build force over a period of time.
Well, first of all, I didn't know. I thought it was you who got Venki into Osho, but this is this is new learning for me. So, what got you fascinated about what you heard in those cassettes?
Very interesting. Because at that time I was an engineer and there were songs, there were several other things, but I think later on we'll talk about why only a few people are in this pursuit. It is not decided by you or me, which is the most interesting thing. You may decide to become a doctor, you might decide to become an engineer, but once you understand why you are here and what you bring with you, such questions kind of dissolve. I could not have been not spiritual, if you understand that. And if you have kids, as soon as they're born, you can see certain proclivities and certain things that they like and purely dislike. I can't say that's because of nurturing. I can't say that's because of parenting. I can't say that's because of where they were born. I would just say there is something that decides all this ahead, and we'll keep that as a suspense and delve into it a little bit more. So to answer your question, it's not something you decide one day and go down a path. The triggers in life remind you of some things that you need to, because you've been prepared. And I want to start using the word over several earlier births. Now, there may be listeners in your audience who may not completely believe it, and they might think the death of the body is death of Sundar. And that is totally okay too, because that is the whole difference between something that reminds, or something that thinks that a spirit takes on a body, as opposed to some chemicals coming together at the right place at the right time with oxygen and creating life.
So you're saying, if I get what you're saying, so you're saying this cassette that you got was predetermined in some sense, or you just chose it, or you meant to choose some content that landed on your tape, and you listen to this voice, or you listen to some content, and it triggered something for you which was meant to be triggered. Is that what you're implying here?
Whatever, I had the same question, what you're asking me, which is, why am I spiritual? And why is it that whatever I find so interesting, some people are completely oblivious to it, if this is the right thing to do? Everybody goes to college, everybody gets an education, everybody gets a car, everybody gets a job, everybody gets married. But if spirituality is the aim, how come not everybody is into it? Why? And there, I kind of feel that if you start to understand reincarnation, which is something divine, continues to take several births, then there is something collected. And so, you're coming in to play the second innings of a cricket match or, the fifth set in Wimbledon. You're going to play it differently because there is a past that you have created where the score is 2-1 or 2-2. Based on that, you're going to decide. So something of the past decides how you're going to play in the very same game. And if you are losing 3-5 or 1-4, you would play differently. You just cannot play every single game that you start as if there was no past. So think about it. So then can you ask Federer, did the previous thing change why you played this cautiously or aggressively or whatever? Exactly why you go down a certain path. And also, they say that that also decides why one of your child would be interested in dancing, why one of your child would be interested in cooking, and why somebody would be very good in music, and why somebody is attracted to mathematics and the other kid is not. It's fascinating.
So I get that, but I guess my question was that you listened to Osho. This landed right. Your brother sent you this. You were already, so you said at the age 9 you prayed to this light because you cared for your grandfather, and that kind of triggered off some processes for you, and then you got these tapes. And so, what about what Osho said appealed to you? What happened?
That's a very good question. So, what I liked about the way Osho was going ahead and explaining was something completely different about self knowledge. It is not about how I would be successful in the external world, how I would dominate, how I would learn, how I would be good. He started to say things that I think about when I'm lying down on my bed, just going to sleep. Things like guilt, conscience, I hurt somebody, I am perturbed, I am tense, I have an ego, that got hurt. So he was starting to throw some spotlights of what's happening in our inner life. And we all have an inner life, whether we choose to down 7 glasses of whiskey and forget about it or not, there is a small voice within, which is our compass, which keeps us, which is why you don't see bodies all around you when you walk out, because there's something within which is ensuring that you don't stray too much. But there are a few who do.
So I still am waiting to hear what Osho said that impacted you, and how did it
Ha.
impact you at that time? Like, how did it change you, or how did it? What did you start doing differently? What happened?
So, with regards to listening to something and being able to take immediate action on it is again something that doesn't happen instantaneously, which is why it takes over a long period of time. And you also graduate. It's like your kindergarten teacher saying A is apple to someone going on to do a postdoctoral physics. There may not be any connection between what you heard at A is apple, but it's very hard for someone who hasn't understood A is apple to go on and do a PhD, correct? Because
Okay.
so the only thing that I can say is here is a man who was talking about something which the rest of the 99 people around me were not speaking about, and I laid value for what he was saying, which is my inner life, which I
So
said.
what was he saying? What was he saying? Give me,
So
give for,
I'll
so
give
for the
you an
listeners.
example, right? The
Yeah,
the
yeah.
few cassettes that I really liked about was
Mm-hmm.
he talked about, there's one cassette specifically which talks about judging. He basically says that your mind wants to judge because it wishes to conclude. And conclusion provides a sense of doneness, completeness, so that the mind doesn't have to be in the unknowing. But then he said to be spiritual is constantly to be in the unknowing. Now, unknowing is a different than ignorance. So it's not like I'm just sitting in the cave and I don't read anything and I say I'm in unknowing. This need for us to box things, like Santosh is a good guy, Santosh is a bad guy. This movie was good, this movie was bad. So this kind of wanting to put it into two, typically there are two boxes, yes, no, like, dislike, which is basically called Dvaita or two-ness or living in the two. In fact, the whole aspect of spirituality is, he also he says, can I not have the word yes and no? And why can't be a third word? And this third word is available in electronics, which is a state of tri-state. It is high impedance. It's not high, which is 0 or 1, but then it also goes into a third state, which is why it's called transistor. So that third state is something that is higher than the lower two states. It's very interesting. It's like an umpire who is there, who is above the two teams that are fighting, and being able to say at the end, but waiting and watching. So there is this whole aspect of a third state, which starts to become interesting, to be in the unknowing. So when you
Okay.
go back to what he was talking about judging, I started to see how quickly I judge. But that doesn't mean I stop judging. I'm judging right now. Am I speaking well? Am I going to impress? Am I not going to impress? Is he liking what I'm saying? So this goes on. But what I realized is the mechanism of judging I can't stop. But do I need to act on it? And the next thing is, I'm surrounded by people who judge, but each one's judgment, when they come and say, this is good, this is bad, I give them all, let's say, one vote. But my own opinion, my own judgment, I give it 100 votes. So what shifted in me is, let me give one vote for Sundar also. It's not a veto, it's a vote. Then I start to be more open. I start to allow inputs that I would have shoved away. And sometimes it's also the past relationship where 3 times he has told me something wrong. And I say, like in your finance things, they say, right? Past performance is no guarantee of the future. We need to live like that. And so that is one example. And also other times when he speaks about being in these kind of states and speaks about creation, speaks about the futility of who you are. I got a lot more interested in that than current events and other things. So,
Got it. Got it. That's beautiful. So there's a lot of gold in what you just said, Sundar. So obviously, it seems like that one example you gave about judging seems to have impacted you deeply at that stage. And so yeah, and this is important because people who are listening to this maybe in that state, and they're questioning, they're trying, they're consuming. And today content is a lot more available than back in the days when we were listening to cassettes. So there are certain contents that hit you in your heart, and there are certain content just pass you by, right? And so I also want to click a little bit on that part in terms of what was there something in your that stage of your life where this aspect of, say, the example you gave seems to be an important thing that impacted you, of judgments, or this whole domain of black and white, or binaries, that you were struggling with that yourself, like you were probably frustrated, or you were like, it's not making sense, and then suddenly this content or this knowledge arrives on your doorstep and say, aha, this makes sense. Is that something that is that how it happened for you as well?
Not really. So I would basically say, like what you are asking is, you see this lovely mango, and then you are asking, while you started to till the soil, there is no discussion of mango or sight of mango or whatever it is. It's kind of a preparation. It's kind of a tilling. You could have put anything in it and it would have grown. Okay. So there are certain preparations that may not have, but even the fact that there is an inner life, even the fact that not everybody outwardly looking, that there is someone who has looked at what happens in the conversation which I have with myself. And that takes on something where in the beginning it looks like the outside world is not the end all. Me making a name, making money, doing these things which all are tick marks in your world is not the end all. There is something else. And what happens is, start by saying, okay, 99% is that, but 1% I will. And that's the 1%. But today, it has shifted for me. I look at the entire rest of the world as 1%, and the inner journey and the inner work as 99%. So if you ask me how it has touched and what it has changed, I cannot connect the tilling of the soil to the mangoes I'm eating now. But if I didn't have this flow of Osho running into me, I don't think I will be talking about mangoes now. If my inner thing was a farm and this is what happened. So it's not linear. And you will also realize that certain transformation is an aha moment. You get it. So it's not a 9 years of you doing medical to finally be able to do a surgery. The beauty of inner realization and transformation is happens instantaneously. It happened for the Buddha, it happened for Ramana, it happened. But I would be a fool to just sit around and wait for that to happen. But if you also start looking at Buddha's own story about his previous births, because he could see all the three times, the present, the past, and the future, Buddhism maintains that there were several births that he had taken specifically before this could happen, and it didn't happen as soon as he came out of his mother's womb. He had to sit under the Bodhi tree and undergo that 42 days of not eating, and a girl coming him and giving him the rice gruel, and then it happening. So it's very, very fascinatingly interesting aspect that there is more to life than the material aspect of it. But it's very difficult for someone who is not successful in the material aspects of it to actually put to good use the inner aspect. Otherwise, it becomes an escape mechanism. And there is a lot of people who kind of think it is either or. It is not.
Yeah. Yeah. So I got that. So I get it. So I think what I'm hearing is, at least in your case. So obviously, Osho has been a big influence on you, and he's a controversial individual in the world today. But obviously, he has impacted his work
If
has
you
impacted
ask
many.
me now,
Hmm.
uh, So this is what I'm saying. The reverence I would have had for my kindergarten teacher in where I am today, I would thank my postgraduate people. But can I say I didn't need the kindergarten teacher? No. If I didn't know how to add A, B, C, D, it would have been very difficult, right? So similarly, the plow has absolutely nothing to do with watering the tree and getting the mango, right? There's completely no connection, but unless that happened, this. So if you really look at it, these are all stepping stones that finally gives you your end thing.
No, that makes sense, and I think that answers a big question about influences, right? And in your case, this was a.
It
So
was the
moving
one that started.
forward,
He clearly was the one who started. And in my spiritual circle, when I asked, imagine, Santosh, that a world with no Google. So I would say he was the Google of spirituality with a search bar at that time. The beauty was he was exactly like Google, was not selling one item, but he would speak on Mahavira, he would speak on Buddha, he would speak on Krishna, he would speak on Christ. So even a person who could have two cassettes, one on Christ and one on Zarathustra, itself was very different, because you always have your affinity to one and you start singing that song. So when someone did a smorgasbord, like a buffet, it was very different, which is why I liked Osho.
Makes sense. Absolutely. Great. So you started this, and this was how? What age were you? Now, what time frame are you talking about when this happened?
College. So from 19 onwards is when I became very interested, and thanks to my brother, I moved in 1992, which was when I was 25, to the US. He continued to send me more tapes, and till 94, 95, and continued to listen to Osho. And then I found somebody else who gave me longer tapes in Hindi of him talking about Dhammapada and a few other things, where he gave long discourses, and he also had given a discourse on Bhagavad Gita. So he would take on a 1 hour session every day for 6 months. So thanks to multimedia, over a period of time, that all came down to about 22 discs of 10 hours total. So about 200 hours of talk on Bhagavad Gita, sloka after sloka. And I used to walk for an hour listening to this for the same amount of time. And so it helped a lot in terms of being able to soak in one person's view about these things. And I would say it was pretty neutral. And the good thing is, again, Santosh, that I was not part of the commune. I was not pulled by the physical. So I always used to say, when I want, I can pause Osho, I can shut him up and start him again, thanks to technology.
Makes sense. Okay, great. So this happened, and so let's look at the progression. And what I'm taking away here is, and I'm just going back to the example you gave, because that's the only data point I have here, which is that whole thing about judging and binary. So where did you go after that, and how did that evolve to your next phase? If I were to ask you to say, okay, that was like phase incident one was that light. Let's say incident two was this cassette, and something opened up, another portal opened up. Let's go to the next portal. What else happened? What else did you realize?
So I'll make a long story very short in terms of me having two kids and having seen the life in the US. And I was very happy that given my economic conditions, that I had moved and had two kids, had a house in California, had a very good job and stuff like that. But there was something pulling me back, saying that I wanted to raise my kids in India. And also another thing is to take care of my parents back in India. So in my mind, after the 2001 debacle collapse and stuff like that, and having seen the very highs of the company stock, which was at 271 at one time, came down to 9, which is a single digit. I kind of, having been in the Silicon Valley, had seen it all, and kind of wanted to, again, I was around 40s, and when was it? It's 2004, so 37. I was very particular for some reason my children should be raised in India. I have no reason why or what. And Swati said, yes, we should go back, take care of parents. And I asked Broadcom if they would like to start a group in India. They were very kind to allow me to do that. And so we didn't think much. We moved back. And Osho had spoke about a particular guy called Gurdjieff. Okay, where he said this guy did enormous amount of experiments on the inner aspect of humans, and he also talked about his disciple P.D. Uspensky. So based on this, when I came back, I had little more time, and I bought this book which is called The Fourth Way by P.D. Uspensky, and I read about 12 pages, and then I realized this guy is mentally retarded, and I put the book back. So going back to judgments and going back to telling you how close I could still be, then a stage came. This was 2009, 2010. Maybe I was 43 at that time, which is when I realized that I've been reading a lot. Maybe I need somebody who's a mentor, somebody who's physical. So at that time, I was listening to a particular person by name Venkatraman, Nochur Venkatraman, who was giving lectures about Ramana Maharishi. And there's something about the way he spoke, and he speaks with bhakti, kind of, a divine love, not just love, for Ramana Maharishi. So at that time, I realized, what is it that Ramana Maharishi and Buddha and Christ have? If they were just human beings like me, what is it that for Ramana, who basically went to a place and spent his entire rest of life with a loincloth, never left Tiruvannamalai, people from across the world have gone and met him. What is it that he has that I don't have? And what is it that he acquired that I can't? And why is he considered who he is? I realize it is not the knowledge. And if it is not the knowledge, if it is not your talent, what is it? And people were getting buried around him because they decided to give their entire life and then got buried. And the people who came to meet him were not dumb people. You can see in Ramana Maharishi's diaries that some of the most brilliant of minds had come to meet him. And Somerset Maugham, who also wrote The Razor's Edge, little bit talks about a God man, is Ramana Maharishi when he came to meet him and stuff like that. So that is when I got extremely interested. I went and met this man. I got a 1-hour meeting. After a 1-hour meeting, I got 5 minutes.
This is Mr. Venkatraman.
And being who I am, I wrote a resume of my spiritual pursuits, and I actually gave it to him. And so that I don't have to speak. He read the whole thing, and it was an application for, will you guide me? He folded it and gave it to me, and he said, sir, you're trying to get everything through your head. Stop reading books. Stop attending my lectures. Give up on all that you're doing, and you go away from here. This was very interesting. My father was there. My mother-in-law also was there because they came to listen to this. And I had this very interesting meeting because I was also averse to crowds, bhaktis, and attending live anything because I didn't like that whole drama that goes on in that situation. And you can imagine the shattering that would have happened. I thought he would see, because that's what I wanted, right? I send a resume and they say, okay, you'll be the VP or you'll be the director or engineer. And here is a guy who said, everything that you have done, stop doing it and don't come here. But that is the beauty of people who can see through you, who can look at what you need, just like a doctor, and maybe tell you exactly the opposite of what you think is going on for you, because they know a lot more than what you know. And when it comes to this, you need someone at a higher level to look at you and give you something which is absolutely opposite. Like I'm an athlete and they say, don't play for 3 months.
Yeah.
So it was something
Like a
like
coach.
that. It was something like that. And I'll finish it. 6 months later, I picked the fourth way and I started reading it in the car, which I never do. And I could not put the book down, and I finished reading it. And then I got certain concepts from that. That is when I started to Google, because by that time, internet was pervasive. And then I got in touch with Ravi Ravindra in Canada. And because there were a small group of people in India who were in what they call as the work, WORK, in the Gurdjieff aspect of internal spiritual search is called the work. So once I understood about Gurdjieff, then I could see how Osho basically was trying to imitate what Gurdjieff was doing and things like that. But again, that's how it started. I wrote to Ravi Ravindra, and I was very lucky to be invited to work with him for a week in Delhi within 5 days. So it ended up being, I wrote to him a couple of times and he said, I don't know you, but we're going to have a work period in Delhi. In the next 5 days, if you can arrange your life and if you can buy a ticket and come here, we'll meet. And 2011 February in Delhi, this started. And so my association with the Gurdjieff work and also with Ravi Ravindra completely changed.
Awesome. So, and we'll get to that. So we talked about this third portal in your journey, right? So you met with Venkatraman. You mentioned Ramana Maharishi. You talked about Venkatraman, and he told you to go back and stop reading. So, what happened? I mean, what were you doing until you picked that book of Gurdjieff? Gurdjieff, did I pronounce that correctly?
Yeah, it's Gurdjieff, Gurdjieff.
Gurdjieff. So, between that time when Venkatraman told you to stop reading, and so what happened? I mean, how did that change? And so, which do you consider as the third portal? Is it that conversation with Venkatraman that kind of opened the third, domain, or was it the book?
I have no idea how I got to meet him, because I'm not a bhakt. There are people who basically go to every one of his pravachans. I attended only one in my entire life, and I stopped listening after some time. During that time, I tried to understand where he comes, and someone came and said, Sir, I will take you to that pravachan and I will ask him to meet you. I didn't even know there would be 300 people listening to him live, because I always listen to him on a cassette. And after everybody had gone, he came to talk to me for 5 minutes, and after that, I never contacted him. So, one thing I can tell you is, I don't control my life, and neither do you. I didn't create myself, nor the air I breathe, like Ravi Ravindra says. There are forces that are far beyond you, but I think Steve Jobs talked about connecting the dots. So when you ask about these things, that was it this, was it this, was it this, the answer to your question is, it is all, and I have nothing to do with it, which is a very difficult place to be in. So you can only receive but there are frustrating moments. There are immense frustration after which something comes which blows you further down. But if you can stay, now if you ask me, after he told what was I doing, maybe I went blank. I can't remember why I took this book again and when I did it. I have no memory of what happened and when I started again. But timing wise, because I attended this work period and met Ravi Ravindra, it's etched. Timing wise, I remember when I met him. And in between, I've read this book. That is all I remember. So sometimes you need this complete blank to accept something without your preconceived notions of it's a good book or a bad book or whatever. I have no idea why I like the same book the second time I read and not the first time. So it is not the book. Like Ravi Ravindra says, the same Bible is read by all the priests in the Vatican and also the entire Godfather kind of, the Italian mafia. So it is not the book. And same way, the land has to be prepared, which we went back to the flowing. And then when the seed falls and the water falls, it germinates. And if the land was not ready, it cannot. So it's not in our hands, which is again, I'm telling you, it's not in our hands.
Yeah, I get that. I get that aspect of it, but I think for folks who are listening to this or trying to kind of get a sense of your journey and key highlights in your journey, um, it would be it would be good to if you for you to just elaborate. So, for example, what happened when you read that book? What did you take away? Something must have popped.
Yeah,
Something
that is
something
again.
measurable must have popped. Yeah.
Oh,
What is that?
absolutely, absolutely. I can explain that part because the whole aspect of the Gurdjieff work. First of all, the word work is a verb.
Hmm.
And the second thing is it is considered an esoteric teaching, which is basically transmitted orally.
Hmm.
There aren't very many places where you can just go. And the fact that you didn't know about Gurdjieff is itself a very big aspect of how it has been kept quiet and how it is not talked about. So they also say the work finds you, you don't find the work.
Mhm.
Now, I don't want to make it too, what do you call, fantastic or as if you're the chosen and things like that, because some people get this thing that, these are chosen people. No, I'm not saying that. And it is not for everybody. But there are several ideas that impressed Osho because of what Gurdjieff did and Gurdjieff's own life and Gurdjieff's own things. It take a long time to speak about that are absolutely different than anything that I've read before. The reason being, he died in 49 and he was a contemporary of Ramana Maharshi. So by that time, electricity was invented. He has gone through two world wars and he could see what we are doing with nuclear energy and the bombing. So they say teachers always come as per the time that you are living in. And their teaching is the most relevant. It's like anything in your IT, right? You don't start teaching Pascal and Python now. You teach AI and ML now, right? Because
Right.
that's what
Right.
is needed and that's what is helps. So whenever these kind of teachers come, their relevance is very important because that is also why they come. And if you look at Jiddu Krishnamurti, Aurobindo, they were all at a certain particular time. But whereas if you look at Buddha, so then a little bit of you need to also understand that there is a whole evolution that is happening of the mind. And so you need different types of teachers who can understand the perils of where humanity has reached and what toys they are playing with. And Gurdjieff spoke a lot about electricity. Gurdjieff spoke a lot about the devil and the electricity. So that is what captured my whole attention because
Mm-hmm.
his teaching was, the first thing I'll tell you is human beings are asleep. This is his first ever well known statement that
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
you do not have any say in what you do. It is all mechanical. The glass of water that you drank was not a conscious decision, but a mechanical one, which basically is programmed. And so he talked about the possibility of human being to be somewhere on the top of the conscious evolution, but there is still mechanisms in him which are working to make him as mechanical as possible. But a dog or a plant or a rock doesn't have the choice to go down, become more conscious, whereas you and I have this ability. And he started to pinpoint that's because he spent 20, 30 years spending his time looking at these esoteric teachings. And he ensured that it didn't become a religion.
Okay. So if someone who's listening to this and has not heard about Gurdjieff, uh, what I'm hearing from what you're saying is it's probably more relatable to someone who lives in the current world. It's more contemporary. His theories are more relatable, less abstract for someone to pick up and move. I mean, that's what I'm taking away from what you're saying.
So the most amazing thing, Santosh, is not about what he has told, but about what you try and you actually do. So as I'm talking to you, I am constantly aware of my posture. I'm constantly aware that my two legs are either planted on the ground, my chair is not swiveling, my spine has not gone back. So there are certain aspects of, and even the volume of my speaking, whether I'm getting excited, whether I am overjoyed because you're liking a few things I'm saying. So the whole idea of it is in practice. It is not just knowing a theory and talking about it. Like you've heard of the word absent-minded professor. So it goes to basically something of tantra, which is the whole idea is being in this moment and being aware and using your attention, which is the three concepts that can connect to all your audience in terms of them running, them cooking, and then doing something, which, nowadays everybody throws in this word mindfulness. But why mindfulness? And what is the theory behind the need to be mindful? All of that you will understand if you go through the concepts that has been explained by him. And some of the people who have taken the work after his death have all been extremely very well known people. And he has attracted a lot of scientists, a lot of people in theater. Peter Brook, who just died, who did movie on Mahabharata, was in the work. And there are several such people, musicians, a lot of musicians. And so his whole approach to the entire thing was very different. And
Got it. And so you mentioned another name, Ravi Ravindra. Who's that?
okay. So Ravi Ravindra was born in Punjab. He is 84 years old now. And when India got independence, when he was a small kid, he had seen partition happen. And then he basically was the first student of IIT Kharagpur when Nehru had just established that. Then he went to Canada to get his PhD. And then he came back to India to get a job. At that time, he couldn't. Then he moved back to Canada and started teaching physics. And over a period of time, he realized science doesn't have answers. Because the reason why science understand the truth so that it can take control of it, you know, particle motion, the moment you understand something to control it, which is very different than a poet or a photographer or somebody in the art. They don't understand it to control it. They just enjoy it. So then he got moved. He met some people in the work. He started getting interested. He also spent 10 years with Jiddu Krishnamurti over a long period of time where he also, like I met Venkatraman, he had a chance meeting with Jiddu Krishnamurti, and that continued over a period of time. So he left his whole career, which was flourishing, where he was guiding postdoc students in physics, and he got into comparative religion, and he got started teaching that and also philosophy. And so here is another man who is IIT level material and got interested very much in the Indian scriptures, started writing his commentary on Patanjali's Yoga Sutras and then on Bhagavad Gita. And then because of his comparative religion background, he is the first known Hindu to have written a commentary on the Gospel of John called the Yoga of the Christ. So here is a Punjabi Indian Hindu, and he says that is one of the books that have been appreciated the most in the Christian circle. So here is another man who's very contemporary, like Gurdjieff was about 100 years ago, now looking at trying to become secular and being away from any religion, but still not throwing the baby with the bathwater, but looking at how the Gurdjieff concepts have emerged actually from our scriptures in terms of Upanishads, in terms of our Vedas, in terms of Bhagavad Gita. And he learned Sanskrit. And so I kind of see a lot of similarity. And that is why I got very interested in him as being my mentor, because a lot of people say guru and he hates that word. And I also hate that word. So in a
Abused
way,
word.
yeah. So for him, I started Journeys Within. It's a play of words. It's Journeys With, and the Indian domain is .in, so it's journeyswith.in. And so it was an
So what is
online
Journeys
thing.
Within? Is that a company? Is that for business, or is it something you do? It's like an educational organization.
I
What
will
is it?
explain. So Gurdjieff says that nothing is free. You need to pay for your arising. And you need to pay in front for your arising, because everything that you are getting and grabbing from the planet, you need to give back. So the whole idea of Journeys Within, I started with a couple of other people, mainly was I got this email from Ravi Ravindra saying, I'm giving this webinar, please attend. And I said, and he also asked me, can you write a review for the book in Amazon, because I just published Bhagavad Gita. I said, here is a man who basically has the content and all that. Now imagine Shah Rukh Khan having to go sell his own ticket, open his own theater, and advertise and all that, right? There has to be somebody who does that for him. So Journeys Within is basically that. To me, in the contemporary world of having been very successful in academics, to have also looked at the need of spirituality, I'm kind of emulating him in a similar way, having gotten off the treadmill at 49 and starting to do what I can. Because of my technological background, I started Journeys Within so that people can, it's a payment gateway so that you can listen, and using some of the known softwares like Teachable and other things. I am trying to put his digital media available to people, and it is for cost because I need to keep running the servers. But am I making a killing out of it? No. I still now haven't taken a penny out of it, and it provides me a lot more satisfaction doing that. And I'm a single man taking care of certain things, and I have a partner, Sankalp, who basically takes care of several other things in terms of videos and stuff. And whatever money we get, we reinvest. So just 3 months ago, we recorded Ravi Ravindra 24 course on Patanjali's Yoga Sutra, of him talking about the entire book that he wrote. So now you have a book written by him 20 years ago. Same person is talking about what he has written in a 24 module. And the Yoga Sutras is now becoming very famous amongst yoga teachers across the world. And so that's the whole idea. So if I get anything, I reinvest in terms of creating as much available, because Ravi Ravindra is not going to live forever. And same thing with Osho. And since I saw the need for what Osho says, because when I say something what Ravi Ravindra said, it has not the same effect. So, which is why to be able to listen to the way he said, and the Theosophical Society or even Jiddu Krishnamurti's foundation have released all his videos. So, when a man says something with his conviction, and when you listen to him say it, is very different than anybody else saying such and such person said this. It doesn't have the same effect.
Yeah. And no, that makes sense. And I do think that, I think what's important, in my view, what's important is no matter what is said by who, and billions of people for thousands of years have said many things. Ultimately, how does it impact an individual in their day to day life is most important. And if that is not happening, to me, all of this is useless.
True.
So it's very important for me to get your personal view, because here we are talking to you. So it's a good time to pivot into, and obviously we can't go into the whole content and domain of either Gurdjieff or Ravi Ravindra, and there's a ton of stuff there people can go check out. Good time to pivot into yoga, because we've talked about Yoga Sutras, Patanjali's Yoga Sutra, and you have a very you have a specific viewpoint on yoga and why yoga in general is not being practiced the way it should be. So let's hear about that. What is that you have, and how that kind of pivoted into creating your own studio and all of that stuff.
So it's very interesting again. So we had one of the meetings with Ravi Ravindra where he picked a particular quotation from a very revered person who took after uh, Gurdjieff. Her name is Jean de Salzman, and Ravi Ravindra had the opportunity to spend about 10 years in Paris, going and meeting her often as she set up the entire work to be accessible to people after Gurdjieff died. She was a choreographer, and there is something called sacred dances or called movements, and she was very big in bringing the movements, because Gurdjieff worked with a musician and Madame de Salzman to bring in movements. Okay, so Ravi Ravindra wrote a semi-autobiography of the viewpoints and the teachings of Madame de Salzman, which is called Heart Without Measure, which we did a worldwide webinar 3 years ago in Journeys Within. And we have that where Ravi Ravindra at the age of 80 is speaking about how we met Madame de Salzman when she was 80, when he was 50. It's a fascinating set. So one of the things that said is, you've all heard of mind and body and emotions, which is one of the central concept of Gurdjieff's teaching, that generally you are dominant on one. There are people who are very much driven by the body, less by the intellect and the emotion. There are people who are driven mostly by emotion, slightly less by the body and less by the intellect. And there are people who are completely dominated by the intellect very little by the emotion, and very little by the body. So one of the interesting thing is you didn't ask me why is it called the fourth way. So anybody who's basically strong in the body undertakes spiritual journey where it is called the way of the fakir. They torture their body, push their body's limits to basically get to something and transcend the body.
Like all of us endurance sports in the
Very good, which
junkies.
is why I'm bringing it up.
Okay,
Which is why
listening
I'm
to
bringing
it.
it up, and there is something very quickly that you're going to get about fourth way. Now the second one is of the mind, which is Gurdjieff used to call it the way of the monk. Now the way of the monk is being nice, monasteries, all that stuff, goody goody, love love, right? And then the third thing he called it the way of the yogi, which is basically intellect, Advaita, Vedanta, all the Shastras, and very deep Kabbalah, very deep Buddhism, all that stuff. He kind of said, those are very old fashioned, and you're running on a single wheel. Unless you are intelligent enough to spend and work on all these three and harmonize them and balance them, you can cut short the time it takes because that's needed for this age. And that is why he called it the fourth way, which is you work on your mind, you work on your body, and you work on your emotion, and keep all three harmonized, which is why I spoke to you that I'm giving you ideas, but I'm aware of my body. I'm also aware of not getting elated or upset. So I'm working on all three of them on a daily basis. So when I'm talking to you about the work, I need to be walking the talk with the work. Now, am I able to accomplish it or not? Your people will be able to see. But I'm constantly attempting to do that. And there are people who can do it better, people who can do it less, and people who are trying. But the whole idea is to try. So, to answer the question that you had asked, this basically is the sentence that Madame de Salzman had sent to me, which Ravi Ravindra had picked, is you're very fast in your intellect, your body is very slow. So if your body's pace becomes higher and your mind becomes lesser, they will meet in a synchronicity, that they both become synchronous, and it'll help you. So he basically said, do you do yoga? I said, no, I'm waiting for a teacher. He said, think about it. And I saw him do yoga every single time he would come to my house. And he said he has seen Jiddu Krishnamurti do yoga every time he met him. And I read articles that Jiddu Krishnamurti got some of the Krishnamachari or someone who's his son to come and teach him. And there's a very beautiful article about that. And that is how I started yoga. And it was the toughest thing for the first 4 years. But again, I was very lucky to get a very good teacher, Mr. Nagendran. And so he used to come to my home and teach me and my wife. And very difficult for me. It was very difficult. I was just hoping it would rain, he wouldn't come, and things like that. But I persisted. At the end of 4 years, when I was quitting Broadcom, I decided, I asked him, would you be interested in running a yoga studio? So I don't teach. So he took care of the physical aspect, getting more teachers, and I designed a lovely studio. And it did very well. You can look at it, Tapasya Yogashala, which was one of the best studios in Bangalore. And one fine day, Modi decided that there will be a lockdown, and it got locked, and I never opened it. So it's a phase of my life which came, and my teachers went on to online, and I still continue to learn from Nagendran, and so does Swati. One thing I told him, no matter what happens, you're teaching me. And even at this age, I am progressing to get some of the most complex asanas, and I'm almost 70% there to be able to do a headstand or a sirsasana, and that's a small thing that keeps going on. And so knowing the theory of the three centers and doing yoga in the moment and being able to focus, all of that helps me a lot, and helps a lot.
All right. So what I'm hearing in what you're saying, Sundar, is that this whole journey of yoga for you, yoga specifically, is a access to physical fitness, and it was kind of to create the balance of intellect with getting your physical fitness up. So there's kind of sync, as you would call it. And for those people who are listening, a lot of folks who are listening to this podcast are people who are in pursuit of fitness through endurance sports, cycling, mountaineering, triathlons, and they can look at that also from that perspective. That's an access to kind of balancing, because most folks are busy, they're successful, they're professionals who pursue these activities, right? It's not just for being fit, but it's also about creating that balance. From That's my takeaway from what you just said.
Yes. So let me talk to you about these three centers a little bit so that you get a
Mhm.
small idea of the theory. And so Gurdjieff used to call human beings as three brain beings. Okay. What are the three brains? So he would say one of them is your spine, which is your physical aspects, your intellect, which is your mind, and then your emotion. And emotion doesn't have a specific center, so it's basically considered to be nerve endings in your solar plexus area. So what he's telling is, over a period of time, long time ago, we were integrated. So if you think of Bharatanatyam as or yoga, so or Carnatic music, there is immense amount of math. There is immense amount of body because of your modulation of your vocal cords, your ability to sit straight, your ability, you can't sing lying down, right? Your spine, your ability to sit like this,
Mhm.
3 hours, 3.5 hours, and entertaining a large amount of audience, and maybe also playing harmonium or whatever it is that you would do. Some of them were able to do that, and your ability to listen and to synchronize and to be live is a huge demand on your body. Just this conversation is a huge demand on both of our bodies. We cannot just simply take it out. So think about what that is. Carnatic music is a three-centered activity. Bharatanatyam is even more on the body, but you should still be able to do the mathematics of the steps, because there is 1/8, 1/4, there is jati, there is swaram, there is so many things that is also happening, and you need to keep landing back. You cannot be abaswar because there is a constant need for synchronization, right? And then there is bhakti, where the lyrics brings, you know, where you're surrendering, or any of these songs that touch you is an offering to God, or what, any of these songs, right? Kurai Vandrumilla is one of the songs where it says, I absolutely have no worries, kind of a thing, that lyrics that lilt you, or any of the Meera bhajans. So what's happening? You're bringing three of these centers together. Even a simple place when somebody is doing a kolam, that rangoli that they used to do in front of their house, they're using all the three centers. So a sacred dance that I spoke to you about, Gurdjieff movements, brings in all these three centers, because there is music and there are postures that you take of the body, and there is quick progression where you have to go through. So same thing, I think our ancestors who defined yoga understood, and it basically brings in the need for the body. It brings in the perfection, because you can't keep your hand anyway. It's very specific, and your drishti, which is where you are focusing and being here and now. So the whole aspect of spirituality is, the mind is a useless organ which can stay in the past or in the future, This is imagination. This is rumination. Only now is the time when the eternity syncs with the time right now. Eternity, there is nothing called eternity which is separate from time. Eternity meets present in this moment. So there's a very good book by Eckhart Tolle called Power of Now. So how do I get more and more from this very moment, bringing in my body, bringing in my heart, and bringing in my intellect, which governs these two. And then you are creating a mix that becomes very receptive in a very different way. And your experience becomes vertical. So it is not linear. Like you can enjoy a moment while listening to a song or tasting something or in your running. The quality of what it is, if you didn't have any distractions and you're relaxed and things like that, happens in the now. And you get a taste of having experienced something in the now. But experience can happen only in the now because the mind does not experience. So how can I get what's happening through all the three of these? And then we'll talk about the higher centers, but it also provides a connect to the higher emotional center, which is when ananda or bliss that we talk about, and buddhi, which is the intellect aspect of understanding. So understanding ananda, so satchidanand, and what's happening, all can happen only in the now. So how do I prepare for the now? Because everything else is just description, planning, description. That's useless. So you experience in the now.
Yeah, makes sense. And I think it's been a fascinating conversation. I think we covered fair bit of ground, and this is an experiential conversation. Theoretically, this you can talk in for hours, and that's what people do. People, teachers, and wise people, mentors, and gurus, however you want to term them. But at the end of the day, it's a journey for everyone, and I think uh, it was good to get the sense of your own pivotal moments, and especially certain names like Gurdjieff and Ravi Ravindra, that not many people know of. Just adds a little bit another element of repertoire for people who are kind of looking into the journey. And I personally think that people who are in pursuit of fitness are not doing it just beyond a point. A pursuit of endurance is more spiritual than it is physical. Once you transcend pain, you're not in the physical anymore. You're so that's why if you talk to ultra athletes, uh, they can't explain to you how they do it because it's beyond. So whatever we spoke today, whatever we discussed today is very complementary to a lot of people. May not articulate it in language, but for sure it's in the experiential domain. People who do 100-mile ultras or 240-mile, just through 2 hours of sleep for 4 days. It's a totally different domain. It's having conquered your body. It's like you talk about now. Unless you can't, if you can't access now, you can't reach that level of endurance. So it's a fascinating conversation. I think I took quite a lot away, and I'm sure people who are listening to this would have taken quite a lot away. I know we've been at it for about an hour, so I want to maybe bring it to a wrap here, and maybe we can follow it up with a more specific conversation around specific work that you want to double click on and say, okay, let's talk just about this one topic on how that's impacted you or how that influences your life or how you run business or whatever it is. So anything that you want to say to kind of wrap up here, and so we can call it
Yes.
an episode?
So there are things that every one of us does, and if something that you keep going back to, where you are taking on something, you are getting something which has nothing to do with money, fame, pain. I cook a lot, and that gives me some kind of a joy. And when my mind went blank over a period of time, when I didn't have associate thoughts, because I was walking, sensing my limbs and things like that, a gush of recipes and what would I cook came in. So all I can say is, rather than doing it as a chore, if you can have fun doing it and also realize that I did not create myself, I have no idea where I'm going, and there are things beyond what I know, right? There are things that we don't know, which are driving us, and if I can submit to them, then you make connect with this ananda part that I'm talking to you about in experience. It's very hard to describe. It's very hard to describe your first kiss or biting into a mango. You can write pages, and there have been so many poems written on love that doesn't absolutely all those books of Shakespeare or whoever and ghazals cannot replace that one moment at the age of whatever you had your first kiss. So uh, that's all I would say. That try to experience not just with your body, but bringing in your heart, bringing in your mind, and it just explodes. And then what you're doing becomes for itself in the now.
Makes sense. Sundar, thank you for taking the time out and sharing your journey and your pearls of wisdom and what you learned in the process. I know we may have just scratched the surface here, but thanks, and I'll let you go and enjoy the rest of the day, and we'll stay in touch.
Absolutely. And since you have a set of people who are going to listen to it, if any of them wish to ask more, because I don't want to do any kind of plugging in and putting this and putting that, anyone who's interested, I'll be more than happy to guide them in terms of the words I spoke about, Gurdjieff or the work or journeys or Ravi Ravindra or Yoga Sutras. This is how I pay back. And it's not about commercial. It's not about money making. It's not about getting likes. So, uh, yeah, yeah. So I'll
Absolutely.
be very happy to help anyone, even if one or two people who listen to this who are interested. This is how work finds people. So thank you so much.
Absolutely. Thank you. Bye.